transcribing. And we're a go. Hello, whoever's listening out there, and welcome to our podcast number 2. Thanks to anyone. Thanks to anyone who's listened and supported us so far. Thanks to Em for getting me to do my little shake before we started this, and for being so consistent and interesting on our Soul Sisters Pod Instagram page and also here as well. Total shameless plug. You might get another. And then we also might have an up and coming catchy jingle for this pod.
Yeah. So shameless plug being that you can follow us on Instagram at soul_sisters_pod. Go and check us out. And our little catchy jingle is going to come live from my friend and my personal Reiki practitioner and master, Brandon, who is over at Visions and Reiki Soul Spa out in the Bridgeville area, south of Pittsburgh. So if you're in the Pittsburgh area and you're looking for some wellness, just spiritual, mental, emotional, physical wellness, they have, massage and yoga as well. Go check them out. Brought lots and lots of light and good vibes. So we're looking forward to having Brandon's work introduce us the next time we get on for episode 3.
Thanks, Brandon.
We love you.
We do love you. I don't know you, but I love you. Today we're talking about the gender health gap. We will talk about missed opportunities in a world designed for the reference man, quote unquote, specifically Caucasian men aged 25 to 30 who weigh 155 pounds, and the superpower being able to represent humanity as a whole. I hope that you can sense that I'm being sarcastic there. I do want to take a moment just to mention our privilege as white women, Caucasian women. Black women are twice as likely to develop diabetes, uncontrolled blood pressure. There was just a news article written yesterday of a Chiefs cheerleader who just passed away in childbirth, as well as her daughter. So there's just a lot more challenges in accessing quality healthcare, and longer travel times to hospitals, lack of health insurance, higher debt. So we just wanted to kind of shout that out to, those people and know that we're thinking about you and you're on our minds, even though you might be kind of left out of some of the studies even now that are including women, which aren't many, which we'll talk about. So yeah, that's just kind of where we're headed. And this was absolutely kind of inspired with one of Em's experiences. And we just want to kind of talk about that. So What inspired our podcast today, Miss Emily?
Oh, friends. So as Alyssa said, I completely understand and have the self-awareness to recognize that I am a middle-class white woman living in America, and that there are women out there, specifically women of minorities, that certainly feel this gap way stronger than I do. But it has been a frustrating couple of years, an unbelievably frustrating couple of years, because where we can all agree is, regardless of the color of your skin, as women, we are at a disadvantage, right? And so what I've been experiencing over the past couple of years has been specifically within the healthcare system. A few years back, I was laid off, lost my job, and that happened a couple of times in a row. Just happened to be the industry that I was working in at the time really suffered the effects of COVID, which happened to a lot of industries across the board, and a lot of us lost our jobs, not just the industry that I was in. But from that, I lost my healthcare, which is a whole other conversation, U.S. government, about global healthcare. But we won't go there right now. But the lack of access to healthcare is really what started my spiral. I would say about 2 years back, I started having pain in my lower pelvic area. And it was the type of pain that stops you in your tracks. Like, you cannot perform everyday functions because the pain is so horrific. And one of the things, especially that Alyssa and I found in our research, is that when women complain about pain, it's often seen as exaggerated or hysterical. And I promise there is nothing exaggerated or hysterical about being on the side of a mountain and asking your boyfriend to heat up a rock on the fire so that you can put it on your stomach to hopefully alleviate that pain. There is nothing exaggerated about that, right?
Or
And
health,
so,
or birth.
or birth, like that shit just hurts. Thanks. So I had this pain for about 2 years, but I didn't do anything about it. Is that on me? Sure, absolutely. But you could also say that it was on the fact that I didn't have healthcare. I wasn't willing to go in and pay thousands of dollars in tests and doctor's visits for people to tell me that nothing's wrong with me. So for 2 years, I just took the pain. And then when I finally got a job and I got healthcare, I did go in so that my insurance would hopefully pay that thousands of dollars. And I did go in and I got checked, and it came up that my IUD needed removed. So I had the copper IUD was non-hormonal, and it was embedded into both sides of my uterine lining. And obviously that's going to cause some discomfort and some really horrible pain. It was removed to the point where they almost had to put me under anesthesia and surgically remove it. And I just said, no, we're not getting put under for this. Take it out. So that was quite painful. And now we're a year later from that, and I still don't have answers because that is not what the issue was. It may have increased the pain, but it's not what was causing it. I still have the same debilitating pain. I still have, I just had to cancel plans with one of my cousins because I couldn't get up out of bed. And it's multiple doctor's visits, and it's, oh, what about this diagnosis? No, it's not that. No, it's this. And it's back and forth. And finally, the last thing that I hear from my doctor about 2 weeks ago was, and I quote in black and white text, well, there's nothing coming up on your tests, so you may want to consult other doctors about different organs. Sick. You want to give a rest? Like, what doctors? What organs? Like, what are we talking about here? Where you going to give me a lead in terms of where to go? Nothing. Just radio silence. And it's exceedingly frustrating because it kind of brings me into this spiral of anger. Not kind of, it just does. Brings me to the spiral of anger of, why don't we understand what is causing me crippling, indescribable pain? It is not exaggerated. It's not, I stubbed my toe and I'm pretending like I got shot in the foot. It is debilitating pain. It is something that if you're not a woman and you've never had pelvic pain, I couldn't even begin to describe it to you. There are days where it feels like a bowling ball is going to fall out of me from that vicinity. Yeah. Ow. Right. And it is just infuriating to me. I've been told that I have PCOS. Then we went back on the PCOS diagnosis. It's not what I have. I've been told I have endometriosis, which has been confirmed, but it's only mild to moderate. So what does that mean? Where do we go from there? What research tells us is that one of the big gaps in women's health is endometriosis. So the symptoms that I'm feeling outside of pain, are they even related to this? Or is there something else going on? I have no idea because my doctors have no idea. And that is exceedingly frustrating because if you can't trust your doctors, where do I go next? You know what I mean? What do I do? I'm not just going to live with pain for the rest of my life, but what's the next step? I don't know. So that's a very high level view of what's been going on and really what inspired our topic today and a little bit of insight into my story. So thoughts, feelings, Liz, where are you at with it?
I am so sorry that you're still feeling the effects of that. I did not realize that it was still so pressing in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I literally just had a doctor's appointment 2 weeks ago when they told me to consult different doctors about different organs And as I say that to you on this call right now, I'm clenching my fists because I still could punch the woman for having the audacity to say that to me. Other symptoms have included weight gain. I've never gained this much weight in a singular year period in my life without changing any external sources or environmental changes did not apply here. I often feel like I'm burning from the inside out. Like it feels like someone lit a match and I swallowed it. It's horrifying. I lose no, I don't lose consciousness, I wouldn't say, but I'm very like I'll stand up and just be lightheaded, can't see, right? Lots of things like that. Where vision, I lose vision. So it's been super, super frustrating. As we dive more into this topic, I get more and more frustrated about my experience because I'm obviously not the only person experiencing this. And listen, we love us some feminism. So when you dive into just the women gender gap in general, it becomes this huge conversation. But when you look specifically at health, it's infuriating. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced to know that until 1993, women were not even considered in clinical trials. They were not even considered in clinical trials. I was born in 1993, which means the entire time that my mother was growing into a human, the entire time that my grandmother was growing into a human, or grandmother, any women that we know that came before us, just not even considered in clinical research. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. And you mentioned, not trusting your doctors. And I think that's a huge barrier with people not even going to the doctor, whether or not they have health insurance or not. There's just such a barrier. There's such an in-between of like connecting the person to the doctor. And it just is not right. And I think that the point of part of this conversation is like maybe someone knows something for M. And also like, why do we have to do this and be here? Like, it's just frustrating. But also, maybe there are people out there who have gone through something similar or, just need to share their experience or their story to kind of help process what they're going through. So as we've had one podcast, it just feels like the mission has shifted a little, and it's not just M and I. It's like, what's your stories and how has something like this affected you? Yeah, it's a tough topic.
It is, and it makes me think back to all the women in my life that I know. Right? I know there's 2 women in my life who are so important to me that have cerebral palsy, and one of them is related to me, and the bus driver just simply didn't pick her up because they didn't want to have to take a handicapped person to school. And you think about where the gender gap lies there. Would they have picked her up if she was a man? Or you think about the fact that when my mother gave birth to my brother, she slipped into a coma because they weren't prepared for what they got into during that birthing process. That's the extent of the child there. But you wonder, if you would have flipped it and it was a man you were taking care of, we probably would have been ready for that, right? And oftentimes I get frustrated because I see Troy, my partner, have an issue. He goes to the doctor, and that day he has an answer. He has a medication, or he has some type of physical or mental therapy. He has an answer almost immediately. And I go to the doctor, and because I don't have a penis attached to me, I got nothing for a year. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And if you take it into minority groups, I can't even imagine how much more frustrating and scary that has to be. I can't imagine being a woman who is excited about her pregnancy, but afraid to go to the doctor. Mm-hmm. The way that I empathize with that is unreal.
My niche is an LGBTQ therapist. I have to write basically permission letters so people can receive a life-altering surgery that they've, wanted for 20 years, and now they're finally able to get that. And it's met with like a little bit of fear. Maybe excitement comes if they have a good doctor, but at the end of the day, they still have to like go through their entire life history. I have to go through a specific form to prove that they are like mentally well enough to be able to receive top surgery or anything. It is honestly wild.
But if a man wants a vasectomy, he walks into the doctor, and it's a 4-day, it's an outpatient surgery, 4-day recovery.
Yeah. Snip, snap, snip, snap.
Snip, snap, snip, snap, send him home. As they say.
And this goes back so far. We are reading this book. Oh, you can't see it on here because it's blurry and it's a podcast, but it's called Invisible Woman by Caroline Criado Perez. And it is really an awesome read. It's a lot of like statistics and facts. But one thing I found that she writes is the male default bias goes back at least to the ancient Greeks, who kicked off the trend of seeing the female body as a mutilated male body. Thanks, Aristotle. Love this woman. The female was the male turned outside in. Ovaries were female testicles. They were not given their own name until the 17th century, and the uterus was the female scrotum. So everything's literally just compared to a male at every point. The reason that they were inside the body rather than dropped out, as in typical humans, is because of a female deficiency in vital heat the male body was an ideal woman failed to live up to. And this is enraging. And then it just makes me think about, it kind of projects my thinking to, Em and I actually both went to Salem, Massachusetts this past year of the Salem witch trials. And yeah, a lot of that is like, thinking that these women are crazy when they have something going on in their health and wellness. And this goes back really far too. But
yeah,
that's my little rant.
That's a great point too. What a great plug for Salem, Massachusetts, and just recognizing the way that mass hysteria can be created and how quickly you can brainwash people into thinking one thing when really another is happening. Not to say that there weren't women that did their part during the Salem witch trials, because there definitely was, and not all men are the same, not all women are the same, but that's not what we're talking about, people. What we're talking about, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the fact that because women are looked at as a niche, women are looked at as the atypical, that therefore alleviates them from being included in the standard for most things, not just the gender health gap, but the gender wage gap, and so on and so forth. And it is such an issue because it truthfully, it makes me think about the women that are being born. Most of my friends and family, not all, but most of my friends and family have given birth to women or are pregnant with female gender babies. Will they grow up to remain female? It stays yet to be seen. But if they do, there's a number of issues to be addressed here before they actually give birth, because it starts with pregnancy. We said it ourselves, right? There are, I forget the percentage, I think it's 7% of Black women actually face complications, miscarriages, and or death in labor. What is the percentage for just women in general? You shouldn't be afraid to go. If your choice is to have children, you shouldn't be afraid. It's a scary thing. It's your body going through a trauma for sure. I can't speak to it personally because I don't have children, but what I do know is that you have the right to good care. You have the right to a doctor who understands everything that is going on with your body and doesn't meet you with question mark results.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to empower each other to just have these conversations. But we do know that in states that are not Pennsylvania and Colorado, where we both live, that it isn't your choice to have a baby. And that physically makes me like shake as I say that out loud. I found a t-shirt at a thrift store the other day and it said, if I wanted senators to make decisions about my reproductive rights, I would fuck one. And it's just like,
Maybe.
it's yeah. And so there's just so much to be said and we are not the experts here. But we're just trying to learn and just have, a conversation about a lot of the gaps here that, women are not privy to. We don't get these privileges that men with penises do. So
we keep it lighter and we refer to a quote from the TV show Friends. Rachel Green did say, "No uterus, no opinion." And I stand by that. I stand by that so heavily. I use that in my life frequently, not just for medical issues, but for a plethora of opinions that I stand behind. No uterus, no opinion. I do not, I have to say, I don't know how other women feel out there, but how I personally feel is that if I'm researching a new doctor or there is a medical issue that I need to take care of or I need to be seen by someone, I hate to say this because there are people that are close to me that are men that are wonderful physicians and doctors, but I'm not coming to see you. I'm going to go see a woman. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And I mean, then there's the difference between an MD and a DO. And I have a DO, which is, I literally just had to re-Google it again. Osteopathic medicine versus like just getting medicine. So they're trying to look at like the whole human, the whole body to try to find out, where these issues are. And I had a DO. He was a male. He was really lovely. He referred me to different people because I was having a fainting issue, which I still haven't figured out what that's from. My male doctor who I was referred to told me to stand up slower and drink more water. Didn't know that would be from fainting, but anyways, he was really great and he actually listened to me. But then like, there's no continuance of care. Whoa, I wasn't moving. And my lights went off, but that's okay. Anyways, he's gone. He's not my doctor anymore. They didn't tell me where he went. He didn't know he would be leaving. He was just ranting to me right before he left that like computers are making it so, doctors aren't as needed in certain places. And he was kind of on his own little rant and I haven't seen him since and I don't know where he went. And it's these things too that are just like, this is not the way that the healthcare system is supposed to be run. My grandma had seen a doctor for like 30 years and then they were just gone. And that's really hard to like lose that continuation of care. And so there's just so many different aspects where it's just fucked. Excuse my French, but it's just really frustrating. I think for people of all ages, sizes, sexes, anything. And so I think from my stance, I'm just like, I'm here with you, whoever's listening. And there's so much more we could dive into if you ever want. We're here. But yeah.
Liz, do you mind? You don't have to share your experience if you don't want to, but I'm interested. First of all, if you're a doctor out there and you're listening to this, just know, especially the doctors that are in direct relation or friendship with us, we support and know that you are not one of these shitty doctors. We know that you're working to change this standard and we appreciate you. But for the shitty doctors that exist, it is fucked and we're sick of this shit. But do you mind, Liz, backpedaling for us a little bit? You had talked about your fainting spells and it concerns me as your friend, it concerns me as a woman, and it concerns me as a human that you had these fainting spells. You were told to drink more water and eat more food, and then nothing. So can you tell us a little bit more about like your experiences with your fainting spells, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Well, first I want to comment on the fact that one of my besties is a doctor and she commonly, it's great that she's a lady doctor out there, but she commonly is working 80 to 100 hours a week. I don't even know how many hours are in a week, but that's too many hours to work. So there's the issue there too, where like, people are trying to be effective healthcare workers and they're overworked and underpaid and undervalued. And so again, just another rabbit hole that we could just go so far into. But yeah, I fainted last June, and I had like, I'll like black out every now and then, and I'll just like catch myself and be okay. But I actually fainted, and then I guess I seized a bit. My partner told me that I seized and like foamed at the mouth. I woke up to like a concert that had stopped, and a kind of police officer, like health person, like offering me snacks and things. I just got up and took the Gatorade and the Rice Krispie treat and sat down, felt super lightheaded. But my partner was really shook by it. And I was too. Like my body felt exhausted from what it had gone through. And I, wasn't doing anything too abnormal. So that was really scary. And that's what started my journey of trying to figure out what's going on. I got like brain scans and a lot of like those stress tests. I was hooked up to like my blood pressure was checked when I was like running on treadmills. And I think the doctor even told me like, oh, like you've ran the longest in these tests, because it's like typically older people with like heart problems. But then again, that's not even true. Heart problems are one of like the leading causes of death in women and men. And anyway, so this happened over a year ago now, and I still have only had a few doctor appointments because every appointment is at least 6 months out. Sometimes the doctor will cancel on me or try to move the times that don't work for me. His bedside manner is not super great either. So even when I do go in to him, like he just spits the facts, which, I appreciate, but I need a little more. I need like some things to try to improve. So yeah, I don't really know what's happening. It's still scary. I have not fainted since. Shout out to electrolytes. I think it really helped me a lot, which he did recommend. Sleep more, drink more water, eat more calories, stand up slower. But does that make me faint and seize? I don't think so. I don't feel like anything was really improved, except that like there's nothing wrong that they can tell with my heart or my brain. And so it kind of feels like Emily vibes, like, oh, check and see if there's another organ that has something wrong with it. It'd be nice to know like if indefinitely it was just like drink more water, but yeah, it just doesn't feel great for me. So that's kind of my experience.
Yeah, I have to say, hearing that, it's very interesting because a lot of the things that you read in Invisible Women, as well as a lot of the research that we do as we continue to look into this gender health gap issue, comes down to nutrition as a priority, which it is. I'm someone who worked in health and fitness for 10 years. Nutrition is important, absolutely. And you're listening to two women right now who are extremely active. We are constantly, if not doing yoga or working out, we're outside, we're climbing, we're hiking, we're skiing. It is an active lifestyle that we're leading. And do we enjoy a beer with our friends every couple of weekends? Sure. Are we going to say no to Mama Baker's dessert pizza? Absolutely not. But we're not here eating donuts for breakfast and then having a whole cake to ourselves at night. And so to think that while we understand when you get older, your body changes and all that happy shit, to think that two women who are experiencing completely different symptoms and going through different things, both women are being told, maybe you should consider your diet, or maybe you should drink more water. That's a great place to start with most Americans because, yes, absolutely, obesity is an epidemic, but neither one of us are obese, and that's not the issue here. That's not what's causing Alyssa to drop and hit the floor and seize. That's not what's causing me to be unable to stand up because everything from the belly button down feels like it's falling off or out. And it's such an interesting and infuriating conversation for me as one, someone who used to be a weight loss professional, and two, as a woman to be told, oh, well, even though we spent our whole lives telling you one thing, it's now affecting your body this way. So do the same thing, but do it differently. Eat and drink differently, as if that's the Band-Aid that's going to fix all women's health. It's not. Wake up, do research that actually pertains to women and women's cells and women's organs, and see what's going on with women specifically. Stop doing research where all your subjects are men. It's not helping us. It's not helping anyone. It's more than half the population. I mean, I believe the world is made up of 65% women. If I'm not incorrect, you can double check me on that. Go Google it. But how is it more than half the population is being told to change their nutrition and how much water they drink, but they're hitting the ground seizing, or they can't stand up, or they're dying in childbirth? Dying in childbirth has it could, but it has nothing to do with how much water you're drinking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and something that we found in research is that 70% of women in the US, as of, I believe, 2024, have chronic pain. 57% of these women are misdiagnosed. And yeah, it's just not diagnosed at all for many of these women. And I think that might stand for M. I don't know if I have chronic pain, but I'm afraid that I'm going to just drop to the ground and die. But yeah, I mean, chronic pain is not something that we should have to live with. And I mean, so many people are. We practice something in DBT called radical acceptance. And it's like, I don't approve of this, but I accept that this is happening. And to say that to someone with chronic pain, it's really hard for them. And I think it's really hard for people with chronic pain to like go back to the doctors time and time again. Maybe they have their list of questions ready to ask, and they're still not getting answers. And they're not getting like, okay, here's what you should be asking next. Or, here's a pamphlet about some stuff you could like research yourself. And that's not to say that there aren't, studies out there and things that are trying to like help us to understand what's going on. Like there's been a 25 long year study with Boston University, which I've got to be a part of working with them. They're fantastic organization. So there are people out there trying to, understand what's going on. But at the end of the day, it's just not enough. It's just not enough.
I could not agree more. And shout out to the people that do understand what's going on and are trying to educate us, but it is not enough. And I think when you talk about education, think about, I mean, we were in health class together, right? Alyssa and I went to high school and middle school together. We were in health class literally together. I remember health class. I remember the last 15 minutes of health class and the boys that we were dating coming in and talking to us and us carrying on and us not actually learning about our health. And I think back to all opportunities that we had as adolescents to understand more about what's going on with our bodies, but that wouldn't have even been presented because we don't know as a general population very much. I have a doctor that I see weekly. Her name is Dr. Laura Bullard. Shout out to her. If anyone, again, is in the Pittsburgh area and you are looking for any type of advisement in terms of chiropractic care, hormonal care, nutritional care, so on and so forth, she is your girl. She is fantastic. She is amazing. But I went in, I have a shoulder injury. She's working on my shoulder. And I say to her, oh, it's really weird. It's a different feeling in my shoulder. It just feels like something is popping out when I breathe and so on and so forth. And she goes, okay, lay down. And she's talking to me. And one of my ribs is pushing through, which is a common thing. Sometimes ribs move, bones move. And she says to me, hey, what day of your cycle are you on? And I was like, oh, I'm on day 2. And don't quote me on this. Reach out to Dr. Pollard if you want to know the actual nitty gritty of it. But she said something along the lines of, oh yeah, when our bodies are producing more estrogen, our bones are more likely to shift. That's probably why this happened. What? I have never heard of that. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard that? I've never heard that in my life.
Be nice to know instead of learning about abstinence.
Yeah, instead of learning not to have sex before you're ready, which you shouldn't, or not to have sex before marriage, which is your choice as long as you are mentally and physically prepared for that type of thing. it never occurred to anyone to let me know that when my body is producing more estrogen, things like that can happen, especially when I'm already injured. How, as women, do we not know this? Thank you to my doctor for having the wherewithal to educate me about that. Is it not infuriating that I did not already know that, so that I could walk in and be like, hey, I'm on day 2 of my cycle. My shoulder's feeling kind of funny. And she's like, oh yeah, normal. No, instead, I'm worried that I re-injured myself.
So if anyone out there knows any other interesting facts like that, where you can teach us about our own bodies, we're here for that too. Because I did not know that. I know to like, be gentle to myself when I'm on my period, but in some instances we don't even get to do that. Like you have to go to work, you have to, stand on your feet and continue your job. There's no like special treatment if you're, bleeding from your body consistently for a week. And that's another topic you could go down.
Oh, Lord, if men had menstruation cycles, good God, there would be a holiday once a month. There would be a holiday once a month.
Yeah.
And it's crazy too, because we talk about this 70% of women in the US as of 2024 have this chronic pain in various areas of their body, right? 70% of women chronic pain, but they are still expected to show up and be mothers. They're still expected to show up in the workplace. God forbid you take a personal day at work without being shunned for it in some type of way, being deemed lazy, being deemed like, hear your coworker from the next pod over say, oh, well, I worked through COVID, or I worked through the flu and she can't come in because her foot hurts or her pelvis hurts or her shoulder hurts. No, actually I can't, because I can't stand up. And while I'm super grateful to have a remote job, very grateful, it allows a lot of freedom in my life. It's helped the fact that I am still, not necessarily in my most current job, but in jobs past, I'm still expected to show up and perform when I am ill, when I'm in pain, when I'm menstruating. It is expected of me. And as we know, women have a much higher tolerance for bullshit in general, let alone pain, than men do. So the question is, if men experienced pain in the same way, if men went through menstruation cycles, if men had to go through childbirth, if men walked into the doctor's office and had no answers when they walked out, would they still be able to, and would they still be expected to show up to work the next day, to come home, be a dad, to go run the bake sale, right?
Well, I found a quote from Invisible Women that I really liked. And there's a chapter about how, like, women in construction, there's not gear made for them. There's not tools that are made to accommodate them. She talked about how, like, I think recently Google just made like a couple pregnant parking spaces, so you're closer in the parking lot. She talks about abuse, for nurses. So many female and male nurses are abused by people at the doctor, at the hospital. So that was kind of the end. This is the end of that chapter. And she says, women have always worked. They've worked unpaid, underpaid, underappreciated, and invisibly. But they have always worked. But the modern workplace does not work for women. From its location to its hours to its regulatory standards, it has been designed around the lives of men, and it is no longer fit for purpose. The world of work needs a wholesale redesign of its regulations, of its equipment, of its culture, and this redesign must be led by data on female bodies and female lives. We have to start recognizing that the work women do is not added extra, a bonus that we could do without. Women's work, paid and unpaid, is the backbone of our society and our economy. It's about time we start valuing it. Amen. And if you don't get goosebumps, it's okay. But I sure did. And she really talks a lot about how, like, so much women's work is just expected, you just keep on keeping on, whether or not you're pregnant or, having chronic pain, feeling understood or misunderstood or undervalued from your doctor, from your boss. So it's a great book if you feel like being angry and also advocated for at the same time.
As well as just educating yourself, because I'm sure there's a lot of women out there that may listen to this and say, like, oh my God, like, I had no idea this was happening. and you don't know unless you start talking about it. And if you're looking for the book, you can find it on Amazon. And if you don't know, like if you see covers, titles that represent the same thing, just go to our Instagram. There's a picture of my dog with the book, and you'll see which one it is. But I want to backtrack to that quote that Liz just shared with us for a moment and say, oh, is it expected of us as from a society standpoint, but we as women have also played into this, right? And we need to stop, and we need to start setting boundaries, and we need to start speaking up for ourselves. I used to manage a group of women, could not love them more. Shout out to Team TT if you're out there listening. And they would come to work ready. I mean, I appreciated them so much for that, but they would come to work with everything on their backs and still be ready to perform. And I could tell, like, if something was happening that day, that they might have been off, or that their personality just wasn't shining the same, or that something was going on. And then they would share with me what was going on. Maybe it was a family crisis. Maybe it was a health issue. Maybe it was a personal issue, so on and so forth. And they're like, but don't worry, I'm going to get my work done. And I'm like, no, you're going to log off and you're going to go take care of yourself. That's what you're going to do. You're not going to get your work done, because at the end of the day, this does not matter. Your health matters. Your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health. That is what matters. And as women, the first thing that we need to do, Alyssa used a great term before we actually started recording today, call to action. Call to action is, as women, we need to stop. We need to understand that it is okay to have boundaries, and it is okay to say, I'm not well right now. I'm not doing okay. I don't feel good mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. And no, you don't have to show up that day and do all of the things that not only society placed on you, but that you placed on yourself. Because as a woman, you get stuck in this fabricated idea of feminism, which is, OMG, you're a queen, slay baby, blah, blah, blah. Keep killing it. You have to rise to the top. You have to outdo the men. And that's true. You are a queen, and you don't have to outdo the men. You're already doing it, but you do still have to take care of yourself. And it is okay to take it off sometimes. And it is okay to put your health first. And it is okay to think about the repercussions if you don't, for yourself. Because as women, we typically put everyone first, think about yourself second. But if you don't start to think about yourself, then you're going to get to a point where you can't think about anyone else, because you're going to be in a hospital bed with a dumbass doctor who can't answer your questions because he doesn't do his research.
Yeah. And this trauma is like in our bones, right? There's generational trauma. There's what we learn from our families. There's what we learn from just people around us who are our, role models at different times in our lives. But I found this wonderful African-American woman who has this like concept of radical recovery, radical rest, like this concept that rest is a radical thing. Like you must seize it and practice it. She has a book called Pause, Rest, Be. And I actually won it, and she sent it to me in the mail. And it's stillness practices for courage in times of change. And she's just fantastic and really like highlights the fact that like it is kind of a radical thing to take back that ability to find rest and recovery and take the time that you need. And, not everyone gets to take it because of that, societal expectation. And so there's definitely like a balance there. But it is just a really wonderful like concept. And I'll put like all the links in our Spotify thing of like a lot of the books and resources that we've talked about, some of the studies, just so they're there. Maybe no one ever looks at them, but I might want to go back and check them out. But Octavia Rahim is a mother, an author, and a woman who radically rests. And I hope that we can take note from her and our ideals too.
What do you do to radically rest, Liz? Like, since you've won this and you've read this, what do you do to find, other than sleep, which, as we know, I suck at? What do you do to rest? What do you do to find solace?
Yeah.
So the book is a lot of different like practices that you can visit and visit again. There's like very few words on each page to try to just like have you read things slowly. So I try to revisit that book as often as I can. But I was actually just talking about this in my DBT consult, and the question was, what do you do for your mindfulness practice? Which can be a restful thing. It's being present in the moment, in the space that you're in, which is really hard for some of us to do. And that's okay. But one thing I try to do, like, especially when I'm working, is just take time to take a walk, a very slow walk. Because for some people, walking is not restful. It might be fearful. You might be afraid to go outside, or, things that I may take for granted may look different. But yeah, I think time in nature for me is one way that I find rest, and shamelessly watching like a Netflix show or something. There's a lot of like shame around, like you can't binge a TV show, and like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't, only watch TV for the next 7 days. But I think with everything, there's a balance. And so I don't have much shame in like doing that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doing that.
What about
I love
you?
that. Well, first of all, I love that you normalize binge watching, because one of my favorite things to do is to put on something mindless, something that you've watched or listened to or experienced so many times that you don't actually have to pay attention to. You can just sit in it. So that is definitely right. That is totally comfort show. That is definitely something that I do. Another thing that I do is I sit with my dog. This is going to sound not weird, but different. I sit with my dog and I make sure that his skin is touching my skin. So my leg, my arm, if I have a tank top on, or like I have a zipper, 3/4 zipper skirt right now, I'll do it so my chest is out. And there is something energetically, as someone who practices with energy frequently, there's something energetically that helps me there. It calms me down. And it's probably why he has so much anxiety, picking up on my energy. But there's something about him that brings me back to center, right? And I think that especially in these times where I am frustrated, I'm so pissed off all the time that I am in pain and uncomfortable, and no one can give me a reason as to why. And he knows it. He knows. My dog knows. He comes and sits on my feet when I'm upset. And then if my feet are in socks, I'll pick him up and put him on a place on my body where I can actually feel it. There's something about that skin to skin contact that is very healing for me. And then also, like you, something that I love is nature. So even though you're much closer to nature, right? Because, Colorado is just engineered for that. In Pittsburgh, there isn't as much access closer to the city. So I'll put in earplugs and I will sit outside with like the sounds of white noise, but I just need to touch grass. It's a practice called grounding, and just feeling the vibrations from Mother Earth that come back to me. And that seems to really help me recenter.
Yeah, it's really awesome to hear just like how different people find rest and being present in different locations. Thanks for sharing that with me. I think also, like, not to like disagree, but you can find nature just by like you said, grounding. You can just stare at a leaf. Like, there are tons of mindfulness practices if you ever like want to Google some of those things. Not you specifically, Em, but whoever, if anyone's listening. And I just wanted to shout out to one of my, I guess you could say colleagues, Becca Atkins. She's from Nevada, and she used to have a dog that she would take to her therapy sessions because she's a therapist. And she said one time that one of her clients were feeling like really, really bad. And the dog like came into the session and the person was like, "Can I pet your dog?" After the session was over, the dog went outside and like just vomited a lot. And so I feel like that's just like an example of like, yes, people take your energy, animals take your energy, for better or for worse. And like, they are service animals. Like, they want to be that for you most of the time. If they don't, they'll let you know. They'll just walk away, So I appreciate your perspectives too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so I think those are a lot of like examples of call to actions that
Mhm.
just feels really empowering and powerful. And we talked a lot about like making nutrition a priority, drink and smoke moderately, or don't at all, whatever works for you. Maybe try to find a doctor that you jive with. Try to actually go to wellness checks and mammograms, even if it feels like high anxiety inducing, practicing, grounding techniques before or after you go. Celebrate if you do something that's hard. You can celebrate by giving yourself a hug or like taking yourself out for an ice cream date.
Mhm.
Yeah, just some of those things I think
Yeah.
are little baby calls to actions.
Okay. I think what Alyssa is saying is that those are really great examples of things you can do while you sit in ambiguity. Did I say that correctly? Don't come for me.
Yes.
While you sit in a space that is ambiguous, right? While you're sitting in a space, if you're like Alyssa and I, and you're sitting in a space where no one knows what's wrong with you, and it's probably going to be a long time until they figure it out, it's frustrated. It doesn't, it doesn't, how do I want to say this? It's not an excuse, right? It doesn't create an okay for what's going on. But the things that she just listed are things that you can do to make you feel better. Because while we get on this podcast and rant about what bullshit is going on in the world around us, we still have to find ways to try and make it better for ourselves. We have to be advocates for ourselves. Alyssa is throwing her hands in the air right now because snaps, baby. We love to hear it. Women, advocate for yourself. Do not let a doctor tell you that they don't know. If they don't, you go find someone new, and then you go home and you pet your dog and you feel better because you are never going to stop advocating for yourself. If you have different ways that you can advocate for yourself, if you have different ways where you maybe cope with what's going on around you, please send us a message at soul_sisters_pod on our Instagram, or comment on our post that we're going to put up before we actually launch this episode. We would love to hear from you and hear your point of view and your experiences with this topic. And we thank you so much for joining us today and for continuing your support.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Always bringing it full circle, still finding our flow, and it always kind of just feels like it flows right out of us at the end. So yeah, thanks for being here and listening. And we love to know, how you feel about us or just about anything really. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.